And so we have for you, our listeners, a new show. Sadly, actually, today it will be my last time presenting. I am Rukanah Mogra, presenting to you my show, Muslim Minds in Education, this Ramadan. Joining me in the studio is a very, very special guest, esteemed, actually, my younger brother, Muhammad Mogra, who will be speaking about his experiences as a second-year computer science student and also a fourth-year Ãlim student. But before we get started and we dive into your experiences, I'd like to thank the studio for giving me this opportunity to present and to host the show. And I'd also like to commend them for all of the hard work they do behind the scenes. There's a lot that goes into planning and organizing shows. So without them, this kind of thing wouldn't be possible. And you wouldn't get the brilliant shows like this one during Ramadan. Now, I cannot start the show without giving a huge thank you to the listeners for the incredible support we received for our last show. We actually hit over 1,000 views on YouTube. And incredibly, the stats people tell me that it's the fourth most viewed video on Ramadan FM's channel. And it's also the highest viewed one in 2 years. So wherever you watched or listened to it from, I'm very thankful for everyone's support. Special mention goes to the guests for that show, Muhammad Faizan and Adnan Patel, both of whom did a brilliant job. And if you would like to watch that, it is available to watch on Ramadan FM's YouTube page under the live section. Now, the show is interactive, so please feel free to call into the studio line, which is 0116 482 2086, and share your thoughts, or text us on WhatsApp, which is 077 488 55055. Alternatively, you can send questions or comments through our Facebook page at Ramadan Radio FM. Like I said before, the show is available to watch and listen to on YouTube. So if you missed anything, it's all there for you to catch up on, including shows we've had before this one. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, Muhammad. Ahla wa sahla. كيف حالك أخي?
أنا بخير جزاك الله.
My Arabic stops there, but it's really nice to have you here to share your experience with us. So, as I mentioned before, incredibly, my younger brother studies computer science at the University of Leicester, and simultaneously he's completing his Ãlim studies at the Al Kauthar Academy. So, Muhammad, we'll start with your Ãlim studies. What inspired you to pursue that, and when did you actually start?
So I started pursuing my Ãlim classes after I finished secondary school.
Mm-hmm.
So that was from the first year of college.
Wow, okay.
And the reason I did that was because I wanted to pursue my education further. I wanted to go to college to study computer science, which I did go on to do.
Uh-huh.
But the opportunity that specifically Al Kauthar Academy were providing was a part-time experience. Okay. So that would and does allow me to study university, or I guess at that time college, during the day, mm-hmm. and then also keep close to my religion in the evening and learn more about my religion.
Uh-huh. So in terms of scheduling through the day, because you'd assume college and uni happens throughout the day, so when about do your Ãlim classes happen?
They happen from 7 o'clock in the evening.
Oh wow. So
yeah, it's a
long day for you.
It is a long day for
me. Day.
And they finish at 10.
So how did you manage that during college then? Because I imagine it would have been more difficult at a younger age, and the intensity of college as well is there 2 years of quite intense study. So how did you sort of manage that?
Definitely. It is very tough and hard to manage that time. But with the support of my teachers at Madrasa, they knew the kind of sacrifice that I was making. Most of my teachers had actually been in the position I was in, so mm-hmm. they were familiar with our sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And they helped us get through that by, giving us more advice on how we can make it through initially, especially through those initial first years. That's when it really helped, because that was when we were starting off. Mm. And like you said, with our young age at college, at 16 years old, it can feel really overwhelming, especially if you've just come out of secondary school. You've just had 2 tough years of going through GCSEs. Mm-hmm.
So as I understand it, your college experience was tainted ever so slightly by the coronavirus, right? And I know I have mentioned it on pretty much all 3 of my previous shows, but everyone's experience during that time was different. So how was it for you coping with college work, and then on top of that you've got to keep on top of your Ãlim studies as well? So how did you manage the two? How did you keep yourself motivated?
I think tainted is probably putting it a bit lightly. Almost all of my entire college experience had been during COVID. I think March was when it went into lockdown,
Roughly,
March of my first year.
Yeah.
So it was a long period where we were studying from home and experiencing college from an online perspective rather than an in-person perspective. And that, in a way, I guess, a lot of people struggled with that. They prefer to experience college in person and not from home. They find it a bit exhausting from home as well, especially being in front of a screen for such a long amount of time.
Definitely.
But for me, it was sort of an opportunity, despite the devastation that COVID caused for the past 2 or 3 years. Being able to be at home saved me time from having to commute to college, I guess, because every day I'd spend about half an hour walking to college and half an hour walking back.
That's excluding days you were given lifts by your taxi drivers at home.
My very many chauffeurs. But even that small, I guess an hour might seem marginal, but that margin really helped me during those years.
I agree,
COVID-19 in a really sinister way, gave me time to focus on both college and my Ãlim studies. So I took it as an opportunity, despite COVID being what it was.
That's quite inspiring words from you. It's no, definitely. I think COVID was sort of motivation for us in many ways. People made the most of what the time they had. Spending time with family on top of keeping your studies there and everything else. So then obviously we move over to your current studies, which is computer science.
At university.
Yeah, university. Your face is lit up. Wow, you're just really ready to speak about this. So then how have your Ãlim studies assisted you in that sense, in terms of progressing further in your actual degree? Has it influenced you?
I'd say in terms of how what I learn in Ãlim class influences me in what I learn in computer science, because one is secular and one is non-secular, that kind of sets them apart. But there is an element of logic in both of them, a very strong emphasis of logic in computer science and some logic in Ãlim class. Particularly in last year and this year, when I've been learning about fiqh, or more particularly this year, when we learn about fiqh, religious jurisprudence, we focus on the reasons behind why scholars form the opinions that they did and the evidences that they bring forward. And the flow of logic behind that is really interesting. It's kind of, you got one scholar presenting their proof and giving they first give an explanation and then they present their proof. And another scholar will refute that and say, actually, I found this counter argument to your proof. And this is what I see.
Is there anything in particular that that you've learnt in your 4 years that is like, it stood out to you as being the one thing? Like,
it has to be jurisprudence, because that has been the most, I guess, the topic that brings everything really together. Not so much together, but for the past few years, we've just been learning fiqh, just the rulings. But now we're looking into the insights, the reasons, and the proofs. And so that really puts a spin on it. So that has been,
So how are you managing your time with university studies, Ãlim studies, and not just your studies, right? Because you're a very hardworking young man, we know this, but also your personal hobbies and finding time to wind down and
I guess university has been lenient, because at university you're not always studying. Your hours aren't like they were in college or secondary school, where it's a hard and fast 9 to 3. You have breaks in between. So university is a lot more flexible, as opposed to, I guess, Ãlim class, which is fixed from 7 to 10 every day for me. So in order to manage that time, I think, especially with doing two things alongside one another, it's important to not let the times bleed into one another. You want to be using the university time that you have for university, if you can, and the madrasa time you have for madrasa. And then any time that's left over, you can evaluate and think to yourself, is there anything I can do with this free time that's not allocated to either university or madrasa that I can spend either looking after myself and my well-being, or allocating that free time to catch up on some university work or madrasa work that I've missed. So I guess it sort of depends, because every day is different in terms of the 3 hours I have, by virtue of university being flexible.
You've got to adapt to the, constantly adapting through your schedule.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, as I understand it, you are a man of many languages. You have been studying Arabic for the last 4 years. So, has learning languages, multiple languages, helped you in terms of learning? Like the way you learn a language is sort of in the same way you study, a topic. So has that in any sort of way complemented your studies as well?
I guess in learning languages hasn't been so much of a development of, it's not so much as a consolidation of what I learn, it's more of developing that ability to communicate and think on my feet, really, because that's what learning languages allows us to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, the emphasis isn't so much on learning Arabic conversationally, it's more of learning Arabic as a means to then go on to learning about other books like fiqh, hadith, tafsir. So it can be really interesting in that aspect. And on the side, along with Arabic, I also try to learn French in my spare time. And that is where the conversational aspect comes in. That's where I use French to speak conversationally.
It's yet to be proven.
Yet to be proven. But I hope to one day, even for Arabic, to be able to speak Arabic conversationally and also French conversationally, especially because, like people say, languages activate, one side of the brain, and then you have all your other stuff which activates the other half. And being able to learn languages activates both sides of the brain.
Perhaps a trip to Morocco is on the cards.
It's due, yes.
French and Arabic speaking, so
could be.
Definitely got to plan that. So now we'll move away from your Ãlim studies just momentarily to focus on your actual computer science. So can you briefly explain what exactly computer science entails in terms of course?
So I guess a very layman definition of computer science would be that it focuses on computational functionality, which doesn't sound very layman.
It doesn't, not what I'm saying.
When people think of computer science, they think of creating computers from scratch, kind of like computer building. But computer science focuses on the more theoretical aspect of computers, especially since, computer science is more of a focus on software and developing applications, unlike, I guess, electronics, which might have a greater focus on hardware. Although in computer science, you do learn about hardware and how it works. So that is a very layman definition of it. But also, there's other topics like artificial intelligence, which is really hot right now, especially with GPT-4. You have human-computer interaction. You have learning about different algorithms to compute different things, and also to manage different processes that the hardware might be used to run. And computer science is a very broad topic. Very
sounds very interesting, and I have to say quite nerdy actually.
Nerdy, yeah.
No, it takes a smart mind to do something like that. So just sticking on that, actually, do you have is there a favorite program that you use, or what's the generalized main program that people use?
This might appeal to anyone watching. At first, or they might hate me for it. At first,
hopefully the former. Go on.
Yeah, hopefully they love it. At college, I first started off with Java, which is an object-oriented programming language. And for Java as a first language, and for it being the first time I ever started programming and learning about computer science, I think Java was a really difficult programming language to learn. Especially because it involved the whole idea of object-oriented programming, which in itself can be incredibly daunting. But having learned Java first, I think that gave me a much greater footing in OOP, especially in future years at university, where we go into it much deeper. Some people, that's why I think Java is my favorite language, because of that attachment I have. It was the first language I learned, so I loved it naturally. But in university, the focus shifted more to Python, which is quite different from Java, really. It's a lot simpler and easier to learn and more beginner friendly. So I guess it's kind of, my love has kind of shifted from Java, although I love Java so very much, from Java to Python. So I think Python is now my new favorite programming language, but that is kind of how it shifted.
Oh yeah, thank you for that. Because I didn't know the differences between all these. I'm not a tech guy like you are per se.
Yeah.
But no, it's really interesting to hear that actually. So you mentioned GPT-4, right? Now my question is, how do you see the intersection of technology and religion evolving in the future, or even in current times?
The first thing that comes to my mind is virtual muftis. That's the first thing that comes to my head.
That is true. It does.
But I think...
or robot imam.
Robot imam. Oh, whoa. Spitting out, I don't know, speaking to you in Arabic, telling you a hadith. No, that'd be really good, because speaking of that, you don't have to look very far to see that intersection. It's already happening very, very strongly.
Definitely, no? Yeah. I agree.
What with, I guess, the other day, we saw Quran Cube, you and I.
Yeah.
And such a small cube is able to play Quran. And you can also insert SSD cards.
Connected to Bluetooth as well.
Connected to Bluetooth as well to play, to play the Quran from other devices. There's also, I guess, in a way, we use technology that is more general purpose for things that are Islamic. So, for example, even as something as simple as using a compass from my phone, I can use that to find the direction of the Qibla to pray Salah.
Definitely, yeah.
So, in terms of that intersection growing, I mean, it's only gonna go on.
On top of that, we also have so many Quran apps, loads of Salah apps as well. So we're in a very rich era of technology and religion sort of being used in a good way, in a good relationship.
Yeah. And that's a really good thing, because you want that to be happening. You want people to be using technology for good, especially because today there's a lot of fitna and trial associated with technology, and it can be very dangerous for us from a religious perspective if we use it incorrectly. So
definitely,
with great minds out there creating all these technologies, both which have a specific Islamic focus, or using other technologies which may not specifically have been developed for Islam, to then be using those technologies for Islam and our religion, that's a really good step forward.
There's very, very good points made by you. So this Ramadan, you've not had any Ãlim classes, is that correct?
No, I have not.
So very lucky. He's had the entire Ramadan for a break. Inshallah, he'll return and study very, very hard next week. Next week?
Next week. From Monday after Eid.
So a good break, and then. So how have you been managing your studies outside of classes? Have you sort of winded down, or have you still been doing a little bit of work here and there in between? Because I know obviously our oldest brother, Usama, right? He's currently learning Arabic, right? And obviously he comes to you pretty much every time he's at our house with a new question. So that's pretty much your sort of refreshment in a way. So is that the only thing, or is there other stuff going on there?
I think first I will go back to what I mentioned about having lots of free time, sort of linked to the COVID era, but this is now Ramadan. So I'm able to stay at home from my own choice and free will. Having that free time and knowing that I'll have 30 days of Ramadan to revise, I know that it's important not to sort of cram things straight away and think, oh, it's 30 days, let's go, let's get everything done straight away from the start. Let's start off with a really high velocity, because that is what eventually leads to
a downhill slope,
slope, and eventually you completely stop.
Definitely.
So what I try to do is try and get a little bit done every day. Just try and get something done, a tiny amount, because by the end of the 30 days it will amass to hopefully the whole thing. And also to stop burnout from happening, what I tend to do is
definitely,
if I miss a day, I won't necessarily try and catch up with that day, because from my own personal past experiences, when I try to catch up with that day, it leads me to panicking, and then that leads me to burning out quicker. So
Definitely, because you're sort of catching up on yourself, and it sort of rolls and keeps rolling into a bigger snowball.
Exactly.
Eventually,
And eventually, you won't even, if that snowball ends up rolling back at you, you're going to get crushed.
That's a good way to put it. No, but yeah, I think a little goes a long way.
And going back to our brother, I take inspiration from him, especially because he, with his Arabic course, is taking it bit by bit.
Yeah.
He's not rushing it through. He's not trying to get as much done as possible. He's following the course well, and he's got his own kind of routine for it as well.
Yeah, I think it's very important when learning a language as well to learn to focus on something. You'd rather learn every little thing properly than sort of learn it halfway and then sort of continue
but
moving
still be blitzing through the whole.
Yeah. So you'd rather, the way he's learnt it is lesson by lesson, which is much better than sort of skimming through everything and going right to the end.
Yeah,
definitely. So have you considered a career which includes your computer science degree and your Ãlim studies, or are you more leaning towards perhaps an Ãlim career or more towards a computer science career?
I mean, the best thing for me would be to marry both what I've learned at university with what I've learned from my Ãlim classes. To be able to combine them together to create something amazing, or to help someone do something amazing, that is what I hope to do. In terms of specifics, I'm not really sure what I want to do in the future, but I hope to pursue something in cybersecurity, which is where my computer science comes in, but also being able to maybe be a cybersecurity professional, or maybe just a junior, I guess, for my starting years, at somewhere where there's a religious emphasis, where there's a religious presence, so that I can keep in touch with what I've learned from my Ãlim classes. And also, if I have any colleagues, or maybe if the focus of what I'm defending is Ãlim based, I can then use that expertise to
definitely
contribute to that area.
That's a really that's again, a really good, because you can, there's sort of ethics about cybersecurity and all that kind of thing as well that comes into it. So because you've already had that sort of ethical and moral teaching beforehand,
from an Islamic perspective.
Yeah, from an Islamic perspective. So it helps you a lot, doesn't it? So just going back to your computer science degree, right? How many years is your course exactly?
So altogether, I'm planning to do, and this is a really long title, a computer science master's with a year in industry. And what that means is, so normally you have your normal BSc, which is typically 3 years of any subject. With a year in industry means that you'll do 2 years of BSc, 2 years of your BSc first, then have a placement year, and then you do your final year of the BSc. And with a master's, that means that you end up adding a year of master's at the end of your BSc. So you'll graduate for your BSc, then you'll start your master's, graduate for your master's. And so that is the outline of my course.
So that seems like quite a lot, actually.
It is. It's 5 years, and now that I think about it, alongside with my Ãlim class, my master's will coincide, inshallah, if I decide to do master's, will coincide with my final year of Ãlim studies. And I think in theory, the methods I have in place to manage my time, I think I'll be able to manage it effectively, inshallah.
Because inshallah, but the workload at the time will be quite a
it will be
a lot of work.
Very, very, very,
because
very, very
I assume the 7th year of your Ãlim studies, that's when you have your final exams, and then you graduate, right? In the same sense, your masters, you'll have exams, and then you'll receive your masters. But so how do you have any sort of plan? Have you thought that far ahead yet, or are you sort of looking at it now?
I think because I'm still deciding on my master's, I think I initially applied with the master's in mind, just to have it kind of there. But ever since I started university, I've been thinking about master's more and more. And there's actually a webinar coming up soon at my university where they'll talk about master's degrees. And I think from the research I've done, I'm planning to do a master's anyway, because the experience can be really helpful. The kind of interactions that you have with different students, and the things that you learn as well, and the nature of a master's degree helps with that experience. At my university in particular, there's not really any specialization, which is why I'm kind of going further in computer science.
Yeah. What I'm curious to know about is how many like sort of Asians are there on your course, or is it a more Caucasian and African Caribbean sort of demographic in your classes?
Leicester is, by virtue of being Leicester, a naturally very, very diverse city. So there's a very good mixture of Caucasian students, and you have BAME students as well. You have students from America too. So it's a decent...
Oh, wow, you have American students as well?
American students,
wow,
yeah.
Global.
So it's a very good mixture, and that's very promising for a university like a university.
Yeah, definitely, because you sort of have those typical subjects at uni that are more saturated with the Asian community. So like your sort of medical fields or business and accounting, that kind of thing. That's where you tend to see more Asians go into. Well, with my course anyway, with media, it was a handful of Asians, and that was pretty much it. And it's represented and reflected in media industries today. Actually, when you look at major news corporations and things like that, the Asian representation isn't really there. So, do you see yourself as being somebody in the future who can sort of inspire and influence other people to pursue a computer science degree?
I hope so, and I think it's important to kind of break the stereotype that there's a particular race for a particular subject.
Definitely,
really, anyone can take on any subject, just as how kind of a really big stretch, but how anyone can embrace Islam. Islam isn't confined to any religion, and likewise, subjects aren't confined to. Islam isn't confined to any race. I mean,
to race. Yeah, no, definitely. I agree. Subjects. I agree. Yeah, I think there's that whole notion about what particular groups of people go into usually.
There's a lot of prejudice.
But no, it's good to challenge the generalized stereotype that we have in society, because like I said, not many Asians do media and communications like me, right? So I was sort of I felt like the odd one out at times among my friends as well, because they all did business, accounting, science as well. So in terms of your placement year, do you want to give us more of an insight about what your placement year will entail?
So primarily I've tried to get placements that are focused on computer science, that have an emphasis on that. And alhamdulillah, I've got 2 offers from two companies who I won't reveal, but I'd like to mention the kind of things that I considered when I applied for those companies. I guess one thing was in terms of feasibility, how I'd be able to deal with working for the company alongside my Ãlim studies, and also how much I'd enjoy being there. And there were other considerations too, like travel costs and how close it is. But primarily, it's the experience that you want. You want to make sure that you're working for a company that will offer you an experience, because you are taking a year out to work with them. And there are a lot of companies out there that are great. And I think when I got to the interview stages for them, although I guess researching the companies is probably more important than the interview stage, but at the interview stage, I learned a lot more about the companies and how they deal with especially diverse employees. One of the companies that I spoke to mentioned about their EDI kind of policies, which stands for Equity, Diversity, Inclusion. And I told them that I'm a Muslim, and right now, my interview was in the middle of Ramadan. So I told them that I'm fasting. How do you cater all these different Muslims?
It's a very important question. Particularly when you're, I think it's a good thing to ask workplaces how they cater for their Muslim workers, because gradually we're seeing it more and more that they're improving facilities. Some places will even provide not a wudu kind of properly, but they'll say, feel free to use this bathroom as a sink for your wudu, or use this room for prayers. So you can.
So I think, like you said, in terms of the inclusion, how well they're going to cater for you. and also the enjoyment of the role, and also the job description. Don't feel like you need to tick all of the boxes.
Yeah.
Employees know that university students aren't going to be perfect. They know that they're still learning. They're at university for a reason. So they're not expecting you to be a really grand, great student who's going to solve all their problems. They're looking for someone who might meet some of the criteria, but really has a passion for the company.
Definitely.
And what the company offers for them.
Definitely.
That is primarily what most companies are looking for.
And from what I've seen you do over the last 2 years of your studies, you do have a passion for it. Mashallah. So you have our full support and backing. Not just your immediate family, but I'm sure outer family as well.
Jazakumullah.
Barakallah fi. So with your Ãlim studies, right? What's the jump like between first year, second year, third? Is it like a very, very intense jump? And is the first year sort of a lot of intense work, so you get sort of the basics out of the way, so that when you come into the second year it becomes easier, or is it more of a gradual thing?
It's more gradual, especially at Al Gawthra Academy. For the first 2 years, I spent most of my lessons learning about Arabic grammar and Arabic morphology, which is a fancy word which just means how the words change from form to form. And that is just to create a strong basis and foundation of Arabic grammar. Because like I mentioned earlier, Arabic is just a means to go on to bigger things, which is learning about, for example, fiqh, hadith, tafsir, and so on. But also alongside with that, development of your basic grammar skills, you have exposure to fiqh from the start. So in my first year, I had exposure to a book called Nur al-Ilah, which is where we learn about some of the basic rulings. And also having a book that was in Arabic, we started to quite straight away gain that exposure to pure Arabic text as well, and also read from it. But it had the i'rab as well, so that's all your fatha, dhamma, or zabr zair, pesh, if I've got that right.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's effectively just a crutch to help you kind of ease into it. So what I'm trying to say is, I guess, it's gradual. It's a very have you had so far you've only done 4 years, right? So is there a particular year that's been your favorite, like learning in terms of content learned? Is there a particular year where you're like, this is my favorite year? I think I touched upon it a bit before, but this year definitely, because we're learning more about it.
Yeah, and the sort of how the opinions were formed and that kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
That is a very interesting thing. And you also every Friday there's a talk, I believe, that happens. Was it until 10:30? What time does it start?
It starts at 8:30.
Yeah.
Shameless promotion. It starts at 8:30 and finishes at approximately 10. And
so what usually is spoken about during those lectures? Because I'm yet to attend. Obviously, when our oldest brother attended, I was out of the country, so I couldn't. But no, just briefly.
Okay, so I guess the talks are firstly they're run by Sheikh Riyaz al-Haq, and he talks about so many various things. He focuses more on, I guess, religious explanations and matters.
Yeah.
Sort of like, I don't really know how to put an umbrella over it, because it's a very broad set of talks, and they are really great. Some of the things that he talks about are tafsir. So one that I can remember is, I think it's called Suratul Mutaffifin.
Yeah.
And that is about people who stint, meaning that they try and give an amount, but try and give a little less than the amount that they need to give, so they can save just a tiny bit more. For themselves.
Yeah.
And he gave a tafsir of that over a few talks. So that is one thing that he did. But yeah, it tends to be things like tafsir, how to prepare for Ramadan, for example. Yeah, off the top of my head, that is what I can think of.
So can you imagine yourself doing that one day? Sort of, cybersecurity man by day, imam by night kind of thing.
That would be really cool. Maybe cybersecurity man throughout the whole day, and like, you know, Ãlim man throughout the whole day as well. Both of them throughout the whole day.
No, definitely. There's definitely an opportunity for you to pursue both, which is actually a very, I think, quite a unique situation you've put yourself in, because, well, how many computer science alims do you know? Really, you don't. What usually tends to happen is people either pick one or the other, right? But for you to have that aspiration and the passion, the desire to go forward and merge the two at the end. Yeah, there's not just two parallel lines with Ãlim studies on one side and your computer science studies on the other side. It's sort of an arrow and it's pointing forward. So yeah, I think that's a very unique situation, and it's quite insightful hearing you talk about your overall plans for the future as well. So what's one thing you'd advise like all computer science students, or like one piece of advice that you've sort of told yourself over the last 2.5 years, maybe, like in terms of your study and stuff?
I think in terms of what I do generally, I kind of have university during the day and I have Ãlim studies during the night, I guess. Or advice for anyone really who's doing two things at the same time and trying to manage them. Do a little bit for both every day.
Definitely.
If you have something that you need to do for one of them that you want to start, then make today day one. Don't say to yourself one day, because you don't want to be in a position down the line where you think, I spent 2.5 years, I never started this. Had I started this, I would have been here, even if it was just a very, very small amount.
Definitely.
Over the course of those 2.5 years.
No, definitely. That's a very, very good piece of advice. I can add to that if you want me to.
Please you.
I think it's very easy to overwhelm yourself with studies and stuff like that, and you've just got to find a time. Even making a little timetable, it might seem like a really weird thing to do, but it's not. Actually writing down, okay, this is what I'm doing on this day, and so in between my university studies, this is what I'll do outside of it. I'll make time for studying, make time for socializing, relaxing, because that's important as well as a student. Definitely. It's very easy to get consumed and to drown in your own work and stuff like that and think, oh, study, but part of the university experience is actually socializing with your friends, studying with your friends.
Yeah.
And even outside of study, you don't have to always study, right? Studying is important, yes, but so is the social aspect, finding time to make friends and things like that.
And I guess one more thing that I want to add quite quickly is that to help with, I think I mentioned earlier that I sometimes get burnt out from past experiences. I know that I get burnt out if I try to do a lot of things in one go. But on some days, it's not burnout. On some days, sometimes I feel like I'm just not doing something because of something else.
Yeah.
So
everyone has days like that, yeah.
Definitely. And what I like to do at the end of the day to cope with that is kind of just have a sit down, a moment of self-reflection at the end of the day, as corny as it might sound, where I can at least, at the start of the day, I write down what I want to get done. And by the end of the day, I write to myself, have I got these things done? If there's a yes, that's great. I'll write down why I got them done and what allowed me to get them done. And if I didn't get them done, I'll write, okay, this may be a problem. What didn't allow me to get this working? And for people who can't find out why things aren't working, having that moment of self-reflection might be able to help. It helps me, so I hope that it can help you too. Maybe try it out someday.
No, definitely. It's quite an inspiring story, because you started in college, right? And it's not very easy to leave secondary school and all of a sudden you've got college. College in itself is quite intense.
It is. Very
but then for you to be doing your Ãlim studies on top of also studying at college and then managing your time and then taking it to university, that's very, very inspiring. And inshallah, you have a great career. You're able to, like I said, meet them both in the middle at some point and use the things you learned over the 7 years, coinciding with your day job. So we are actually coming up to the final 5 minutes. So to summarize what my guest Muhammad Mogra has been speaking about today, he is a second-year computer science student at the University of Leicester, and he coincidingly is studying to become an Ãlim as well. fourth year at Al Kauthar Academy, and he spoke to us today about his experiences, how he manages his time, exactly what Ãlim studies are, what computer science is, his plans for the future and things like that. Big thank you to him for actually being brave enough to come in today, and it took a lot of convincing actually to get him to come here, but alhamdulillah, he's here, and he's done a good job. So actually coming up next, we have Wajida Yusuf and Aisha Sheikh, who are just outside the studio. I can see them in the back room. And they're going to be talking about study programs and apprenticeships. So please, when I go off air in about 4 minutes, don't go anywhere, because they've got a very insightful show coming up for you as well. Now I've got to do a lot of mentions. So you may be sat there in the corner thinking, I'm just sat here, right?
Fire away.
So first off, I've got to thank the previous guests on my previous shows for their contribution. They were all wonderful. I've had a great time hearing everyone's stories, relating to their experiences, learning new things. Obviously, there's subjects that I don't know about. It's always nice learning new things. So first show we had Adam Musa, who was a pharmacy student. Then we had Yumna Ismail and Sumaya Batten come in. Both of them were final year radiography students. And then we had last week we had Mohammed Faizan and Adnan Patel come in and talk about their secondary college and university experiences. So big thank you to all of them for the great content they provided us with, and I was honored to host them all. I've got to also thank the Radio Ramadan listeners in Leicester. Really supportive from a lot of people, from friends, family. The support's been great. And it's not just in Leicester we've had listeners, actually. We've had listeners across the UK, so in Birmingham, London, Manchester, Preston, just to name a few. And then you think, outside of Leicester's big, being national, I'm actually international, right? The show has been listened to in other parts of Europe, France, Germany. If you hop on a boat across the Atlantic, you find yourself in America, and my show's being played there. Come back across to Africa, it's being listened in Africa. You turn the globe upside down, we're in Australia, it's been listened to there. And last but not least, in a country with a population smaller than Leicester itself, in Eastern Asia, Brunei. Wow. Which is crazy. So I am very, very grateful to Allah that I have been given this opportunity to present this show. Not many people get given the opportunity that I have, and I'm forever grateful for that. And for all of the support from wherever you're listening from. It means a lot to me as somebody who's aspiring to become a journalist, and this is sort of my career. So yeah, I've sort of taken every show as it's come, and I've sort of just let myself enjoy it as opposed to being all stressed about being a presenter. And I'd also like to thank my family as well. One of my brothers is sat in front of me here today. This goes to show how much he does support the show. He's a big fan. But no, I also have two older brothers at home who are very, very supportive. Both of them give very, very good advice, actually. Even though we're not the affectionate group, are we? Not really.
Not really. That's true.
No, but yeah, no, I'm forever grateful for them. And also my parents as well, my mom and my dad. My dad's been very supportive to me throughout this process for 4 weeks, advising me on how to make the most of my guests and the most of my show. So yeah, very, very, very thankful to all of them. And also not just my immediate family, but my outer circle of family as well. The support's been great. So yeah, we're into now the final 50 seconds. So Muhammad, I will thank you for coming in today. From the bottom of my heart, I wish you the best for the future. You, like I said, we're all very, very proud of you and the work you've done. You're an inspiration, not just to your age group, but to us as well. So inshallah, you have a great career. And now this is the final show I'll be doing this Ramadan. I'm wishing everybody a very, very happy Eid Mubarak, right? To everybody, whenever you may be celebrating. And yeah, I hope everybody has a blessed Eid, and Ramadan has been blessed for you as well. And inshallah, all of your du'as are accepted. So